Thank you. Thank you all for asking questions about this and for being here and wanting to hear more about it. I'll respond to that question in a minute. First of all, I want to say thank you to my husband, John, to my lawyers, Blake and Laura, Laura Rodriguez, Blake O'Curie, and Kyle Shonicus, who's not here. And they have worked tirelessly for 20 days straight to work on this with me and address this problem. My husband's been there. This has been difficult for all of us. It is not a joke. We take it very, very seriously, and I certainly find it extraordinarily disturbing that a group of people in New Orleans who still remain largely unidentified were able to weaponize the grand jury system to indict a sitting attorney general for something that is not a crime. And I want to reiterate that. What I did in sending those letters is a very ordinary thing. Lawyers do it. Attorney generals do it. If anybody in law enforcement might do it, whether it's verbally or by a letter or by a written statement. I sent a letter that advised them what the law was and that they had broken the law. In our view, they had already broken the law, and that there are consequences for that. And those consequences are written in the law. I didn't write that law. The legislature wrote that law. I just explained it to them. And the consequences for breaking the law are threatening to people sometimes. I'm sure it is. You know, I mean, when you face jail time for doing something wrong, I'm sure you feel very threatened by that. But that's not what the law criminalizes. And so what I did was not a crime. It was never a crime. And I just want to thank all of the people, all of my friends and the sheriffs, the district attorneys, my colleagues, and everyone around me who showed huge support for me over this and expressed their outrage over what was happening in New Orleans, because it won't just happen to me. What they have done is open the door to something that could happen to anybody. And that's why it's not over. It's not over. And it's not because I'm angry. It's not because any of us want to retaliate against anybody. It's because what they did can now be weaponized and used against other people. That dismissal of that indictment today was not an effort to simply get us all back together to be friends again. First of all, you can't be friends with somebody who wants to put you in jail for 80 years. So, you know, friendship is not really on the table. Mutual professional courtesy and professional working relationships, absolutely. We have always extended that to the city of New Orleans and its leadership, no matter how bad their decision making is. But this is about bad leadership and bad decision making in New Orleans, and we will continue to hold them accountable for bad decisions and bad leadership. And I'll continue to tell them if they break the law, and I will continue to do my job as Attorney General, and I won't be threatened by this action. But we need to make sure that it never happens again. I mean, they handcuffed reporters outside a courtroom that should have been open to the public. That's disturbing. A special prosecutor was appointed with conflicts of interest that were readily identifiable in public records. Readily identifiable in public records. That shouldn't have happened either. The whole thing is just a bizarre circumstance. The law that was used to start this whole thing no one in history can remember it ever being used before. I have concerns about that law. And I intend to take that up later with the legislature. Any roving grand juror who believes that an offense has been committed, no probable cause, when the law very clearly does not criminalize this conduct, it does not take a lawyer to figure that out. Everything I did is protected by the First Amendment and the plain language of this statute. So this isn't hard, y'all. And yet, still, this was allowed to proceed where I was indicted and then threatened with being arrested and charged with a $400,000 bond. I invite you all to go look and see how high the judge who set that bond has set bond for second-degree murderers, people charged with second-degree murder in New Orleans. I can tell you the answer. It's about $268,000.
General, besides getting the legislature to pass new laws, you say it's not over. You want accountability, people to be held accountable.
I want transparency.
Transparency. What else do you want? Do you want to see a federal investigation? City officials
Yes.
say they had nothing to do with this.
I don't believe that's true.
When you say unidentified individuals weaponizing the system, do you have an idea of who that is, and what is your best evidence for that?
I think there's a lot of unanswered questions about how this came to be. And I think that we all deserve those answers. And that until we get those answers, I just, I think that we can't resolve this, and everyone faces jeopardy. I certainly would continue to face jeopardy. I think this all began because a small group, maybe not a small group, I don't know, people in New Orleans were angry about legislation. And they wanted to blame Baton Rouge. I mean, you just look at the statements that were made in the press after the indictment came down, and it was all about Baton Rouge needs to stop picking on New Orleans. We have together, all of us have spent more time and energy invested in the city of New Orleans than any governor or attorney general in decades. And we're not leaving. We're staying there. We are going to continue to invest our time, our staff, our people, to work for the city of New Orleans and continue to support the city of New Orleans and the good citizens of New Orleans. That does not mean that we have to approve or support bad leadership and bad decision making.
The
How do you
special
go about getting
prosecutor in
those
the case.
answers? How do you-
The
Just
special prosecutor.
one at a time.
Thank you. The special prosecutor in the case apparently wrote, going through the court records, that I tried to talk him out of it and couldn't. Hope I'm more persuasive with the jury, and apparently saying jurors were making patriotic statements. What do you make of that, and why do you think?
I mean, what I make of it is that there was this was the leakiest ship you've ever seen. I mean, it was sinking like the Titanic. It was so leaky. There was more information that came out. All of you knew more about what was happening inside that grand jury room than I did at the time that I found out that it existed. So,
Which is a crime.
that is a crime.
I just want you to understand something. Like, that is a crime. I think the thing that is the most disappointing is the response from this media about the criminal justice system in that city. We've got judges on those benches who literally acquit people just willy-nilly of murder, of very violent crimes. You'll just look the other way. Okay? The legislature goes out and passes a series of laws that the very same people who are criticizing that law voted for it. Y'all don't call them out. You don't say, oh, the mayor, how is it that you supported what the governor and the legislature did years ago when you were in the legislature, and now all of a sudden don't like it? I mean, where are y'all? That's it. I mean, honestly, that's the question. So that's the question I want from y'all. Where are y'all when that criminal justice system has been spiraling out of control? Because, by the way, the citizens of that city were living in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And it wasn't the leadership in that city that saved them. It was me and the Attorney General and the people that are standing around here. And yet for that, the ruling class of that city decides, you know what? We don't like that. We're going to show y'all. We're going to indict a sitting Attorney General. Then, when they realize that that doesn't work, they're like, oh, well, we want to be forgiven. That's what it is. Oh, well, look, we're victims. Those letters. Let me tell you something. This is what I don't understand here. Tell me this. Okay? The DA, he writes a letter saying he's named as a victim. What he should have done is said, I've never been a victim, if he really believes what he's written. Okay? The mayor, importantly, the grand jury made an independent decision. Well, you know what? That's what I want to know. And quite frankly, every citizen of this state should want to know, is whether or not that was truly an independent decision. How many of y'all actually believe, to the people in Louisiana right now, how many of you actually believe that a grand jury of citizens in New Orleans, sui spontaneously, okay, just decided that a letter sent by the Attorney General to the City Council was a criminal act? Now, how many of y'all believe that? Those are the questions that need to be answered.
Well, and I would say this too. The district attorney and the mayor both went on television after they received those letters and incorrectly cited the law and said that the letters were a crime. They're not a crime. Read the law. Go look you can run it through Claude, ChatGPT, Westlaw. I don't care what you do. It ain't hard to figure it out that this is not a crime. And it's been long established, clearly established in federal constitutional law that this is not a crime. And so they irresponsibly and incorrectly went on television and said, oh, this might have been a crime of public intimidation. No, it wasn't. It never was. And they knew that. That was wrong. It was irresponsible. It was legally incorrect. And you would expect the district attorney to know it.
Y'all are legal.
All right,
Let's do one at a time.
Sabrina, you have a question.
Yes. So General, you said you want answers. You, in response to my question, said you don't believe what the city officials said. How do you get those answers? The legislature does not go back into session until the spring election
Maybe.
session. How do you get those answers?
Maybe.
Unless there's.
That's right. I mean, right now, they're not scheduled to go back. But I can tell you this, I've got a lot of legislators wanting to go back into session.
And do you plan to call lawmakers?
I don't know.
into
I
special
wanna
session
see- I'd
related
like to
to
see
the
some
grand jury
transparency here.
proceedings?
Yeah. Huh?
Look, I'm the attorney general. I prosecute cases. I mean, I look at this from both sides, and I'm trying to evaluate how to make sense out of what they did and not do more damage to the system than they've already done. That, it's disturbing what they did. And I don't know yet who they all are, but I would like to know, and I think you should all like to know. We have public records requests that are pending. We intend to enforce those public records requests and expand those public records requests. So if there are public records, then they should have to respond to those. The district attorney's office was recused. He said multiple times that they had nothing to do with it, and I can tell you that I have had multiple people tell me that that is not true. And so I need to know the answer to that. Is it true or is it not true? We're going to find out. And there's civil litigation that could follow too. I think this was a malicious prosecution.
May I follow up with the governor? Governor, what is the status of your request to have state police look into the grand jury proceedings? What did state police find?
I am not going to comment on an ongoing investigation.
Did you talk to the president about New Orleans?
I did not. Let me tell you this. The last time I spoke to the president about New Orleans, you know what it was about? It was about begging him to extend the FEMA projects that have been going on for 20 years in that city. That city has not been able to find completion. On behalf of the mayor, of which the president graciously granted. Okay? The last time, for the record, the last time I spoke to the president was to ask him to help the city of New Orleans, because they evidently can't help themselves on projects that have been going on since Hurricane Katrina. So that's the last time I spoke to him.
Governor, you said the lawmakers are interested in going back into session. What do they want to do?
They want to look at ways that they can take more control of the court system in the city of New Orleans. I mean, let me explain something to you. Like, New Orleans has been so special, right? That they, under our Constitution, carved themselves out of the Constitution for their criminal courts. Their criminal courts have been paid for by the taxpayers of the entire state of Louisiana, 100%. That is completely different than any other criminal court system in this state. They're the only parish that divides their criminal and their civil courts systems. They had 4 assessors, 2 sheriffs, 2 different clerks. And yet, legislators in the past, since going back, I think, if I'm not mistaken, into the 1980s, have consistently tried to consolidate those offices and bring that parish more in line with the way that all the other parishes in the state are run. And that's what we did this session. That is all we did. And for that, they indicted the Attorney General.
Following the indictment of the AG, estimated, if you had to say, how much did this cost taxpayers, energy by y'all, and y'all are both legal experts, what punishment for a crime like this that y'all stated do you see fit?
I can tell you that I did a back of the napkin calculation of how much I owe my lawyers right now, and it's close to $250,000. And I will ask to be reimbursed for that because I was acting in my official capacity. So that's what the city of New Orleans leadership who put this thing in motion illegally and improperly cost the taxpayers of this state. That's not my fault. That's their fault. And they started this. I want to go back again to what they did when they took it upon themselves to ignore my legal advice over and over again and appoint someone to a fictional office that they made up the week of a statewide election for the Senate primary, for the United States Senate. I took that pretty seriously. It could have undermined ballots, voting machines. If the person who had been appointed to this fictional office had showed up and started interfering with the staff and the voting machines and the ballots, it would have undermined all of the ballots in the city of New Orleans. That's how important this was at the time. And yet that has consistently been ignored and underplayed in this. And it is the event that set it all off. Because I was in communication with them at the time, and I asked them to show restraint. I asked them to wait for the courts to rule. And the irony of all of this is that now, over and over again, they claim that they just need to wait and let the courts rule, that this is a matter for the courts. Well, it's still a matter for the courts. It's going to still be a matter for the courts. It's just going to be a different matter for the courts. But the irony is pretty great that they claimed that they wanted to let all of this, after they indicted me, be a matter for the courts, but they refused that very entreaty from me in the beginning so that they would keep calm instead of creating chaos the week of an election. And so, I still take that very seriously. I just want to walk you through some of the crimes that I've counted that could have been committed here, starting with interfering with a statewide election for federal office, conspiring to violate civil rights laws, conspiracy to rig a grand jury proceeding, conspiracy to interfere with a grand jury proceeding, obstruction of justice, wire fraud, injuring public records, malfeasance, and public intimidation, the law that they charged me with violating. Because we talked to them. I told them that they may be violating the law and that there may be consequences for that. And what did they do? They came after me with an extortionate threat, a threat of actual harm to me, personally, to put me in jail for telling them that I am going to carry out my official duties if I am asked to do that by the governor. That meets the definition of public intimidation, not me sending a letter to them. So,
Governor, will the Attorney General be reimbursed for her legal expenses?
Oh, she should be, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. She was acting in the capacity as the Attorney General, in her elected capacity. That, guess what? That's the gift that those city leaders in New Orleans have given to the taxpayers of Louisiana.
Will it take legislative action to do that? Can you do it from executive authority?
It doesn't matter. However, we have to make sure that her attorneys are reimbursed. We will make sure that they're reimbursed. I mean, and think about this. Her attorney spent all of that time and all of that money only for the very same people to then come in and say, please dismiss this. Like, let this go away. I mean, think about that. Talk about wasting money.
And I'd go back to the question of, do we think that this is, or either, because I don't think either of us think that this was just because they wanted to get back to some sense of normalcy. I think it's because they want to hide records. So let me be real clear about that. I think that all of that came when we issued subpoenas. And we were in the middle of we were going to be having a status conference on Friday with the judge to discuss the issuance of those subpoenas, and we had more coming. So a subpoena is different from writing a letter where they can say anything they want and they're not under oath and there's no consequences for lying. So I think that you're in a different world when you're asking somebody to respond to a public records law. We can actually enforce that in the courts, and a subpoena can also be enforced in the courts, and they have to sign them under oath, and they also can get to non-public records. So we still have litigation preservation letters that we have issued to a large number of people, and every time I find somebody else that I think one needs to go to, I will issue that letter and remind them that they have a legal obligation to preserve those records.
We have one last question.
What records are being hidden and by who?
I think that there are a lot of communications surrounding both the original letter that the letter that Jason Williams sent to the city council, urging them to essentially create a fictional office and name another individual besides the legal office holder to that office. I think that's a problem, and there are records surrounding that. There are a lot of records, I think, that exist surrounding communications, emails, text messages. I know that there is a lot of concern over there, I think, about people having to produce records. There seems to be a lot of angst about it. So I think that is what motivated this action. I am grateful for it. Let me say that. It was the right thing to do. But let me say what the more right thing to do would have been. For Jason Williams to have said from the beginning, this is not a crime. Because he's the district attorney, he should know that it's not a crime. And it's not. I'll brief it for you if you like. I'm happy to show you exactly what all the law is and how easy it is to understand this is not a crime. But he should have known that. He's the district attorney. And instead, even in this letter that he sent, he still calls himself a victim. The implication is that I committed a crime and he's a victim. He's not a victim. He started all of this. So, yes, there are records. I'm sure there are records. Some of those may not be public records, and that's why we will continue to pursue litigation that allows us to get any records, even if they are personally kept records.
Can you expound on saying Jason Williams started all this?
Well,
I mean, it's easy, Sabrina. He wrote the first letter to the council saying for them to appoint that a fictional office had been created and they needed to have a meeting and fill it. I sent a letter on May 8th and said, that's not accurate. Here's all the stuff that he left out of the law. And they still did it. And let me just be clear, because I spoke to them personally during this time. I spoke to J.P. Murrill, who called and alerted me to the letter that Williams had sent to them. And I called the mayor and said, please don't do this, because you are creating the chaos and uncertainty that he's claiming exists. That does not exist now. Everything is calm. You can call the clerk's office and find out. You can call the Secretary of State. There is no problem. But you will create one if you do this. And they ignored that advice because of their politics. So let me be real clear. They broke the law by creating a fictional office and appointing someone to it during the week of a statewide election because they were more concerned about their own politics than complying with the law. And the district attorney started it because he wrote the letter. So it's not hard.
and then let me just close with this. Look, people say, well, what? I can tell you this. A federal investigation is warranted. A state investigation is warranted. The Judiciary Commission should be investigating the judges that were involved. The bar, the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, should be investigating all of those lawyers that were involved. JP's a lawyer. So I don't know if the conduct that he engaged in shouldn't disbar him. Jason Williams' conduct, he should have his law license ripped from him. I can tell you this, if I would have engaged in that, all of y'all would be calling for my law license. I know that, okay? But for some reason, because it seems to be the other party, it's just like mum's the word, it's okay. And so no, it's not okay. It's not okay. You know why? Because the law is supposed to be colorblind, okay? The law, the scales of justice are supposed to be balanced. And that's two things that both the Attorney General and I share as a principle from the very beginning, and how we've treated the city or any other of the criminal courts around the state. Let me just close with reminding everyone that we still do have a tropical storm that I hope just creates a wind event and blows the heat out of here. I want to thank those citizens that took heed. Again, I would urge people, as Jay would say, to be weather aware and weather wise as we go through this hurricane season. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.